Hello, my name's Simone and I'm a counselling psychologist. And today I would like to talk to you about the worst type of relationship dynamic that you can be in. And I want to talk to you about this so that you can identify it, you can understand it, and you can get yourself out of it more quickly. Because once you're in this dynamic, it's actually incredibly difficult to get out of because it is addictive. It changes your brain chemistry, it changes you neurobiologically. So the reason I'm telling you about this is because I saw something a couple of weeks ago that I thought was quite victim blaming. And the victims of this dynamic, and there is a victim because one person drives it, the victims of this dynamic often blame themselves for why they didn't leave sooner, but I'm going to explain why it's so hard to leave. Now, this dynamic is one where there is intermittent reinforcement and there's a lot of blowing hot and cold and there's a lot of push-pull. Now, what is intermittent reinforcement? Let's imagine that you meet somebody and everything's going great for 6 months and there's a really intense connection and it feels too good to be true and they make you feel so loved. And then one day it just drops off. You've had a morning text 4 months and then it's not there. And then you reach out to them and they're not there. So you've had kindness, affection, attention reliably for 6 months and then all of a sudden nothing. And we've all had that feeling. It hits you in the gut and you're like, oh. And if you're an internalizer like me, you'll go, what have I done wrong? Now, when that person reconnects, it will feel like relief. And that's because humans are primed for attachment. We are biologically primed for connection. And that's because we're born with these massive heads. We're completely dependent. And what keeps us alive? Attachment. So our attachment systems are outside of our mostly conscious control. It's very amygdala led in the brain. And it's really about survival, right? So when you think about survival drive, very strong, very powerful. So humans are pattern recognition machines because we're constantly pressure testing. Will you be there for me? Will you be there for me? Based on survival needs. So in relationship, will you be there for me? Will you be there for me? It's yes, it's yes, it's yes. And then all of a sudden it's no. And immediately you've got existential dread. Now, when that person comes back, they reconnect with you, you're flooded with relief. And what you do in that moment is really important because you can say, well, is this a one-off or is this a pattern? Now, everyone has bad days. Everyone has, stuff they're processing. Maybe this is a one-off. You give them a chance. And then it happens again. Now, it happens again. You've got that same feeling. But this time you're thinking, are they going to come back, right? You've become quite hypervigilant and your focus narrows. And that's really important because when there is unpredictability, your focus narrows on the cause of it because it's a threat. And we aren't primed for thriving, humans. Our brains are primed to survive. So we're going to become obsessed with that moment where that person withdraws. And that's because of dopamine. So dopamine we come to think of as a pleasure chemical. It's not. It's actually the motivation chemical. And neuroscience has told us that when there is unpredictability, dopamine actually spikes much higher upon the promise, the pursuit of a reward, and it actually spikes right before you achieve the reward. So all of that pursuit of this other person, especially if you have an attachment strategy which is more of a pursuing kind, so more reactive and anxious, your core wound is abandonment, so you will chase. Now that's what begins to set up this push-pull dynamic. Now there is something as well in neuroscience called the reward error hypothesis, something like that. And that's where if we expect nothing and we get something, we value it a lot more too. And this is also changing our biology. So it's changing our neurobiology and it's tripping our attachment system. And what happens over time in this dynamic is that the person who is on the receiving end of this blowing hot and cold, this unpredictability, is being taught to tolerate less, because this person is becoming disorganized. The person who is driving this dynamic probably also has a disorganized attachment strategy, but the person on the receiving end of it, because they're so vulnerable to that abandonment wound, they are no longer able to remain psychologically organized, and they become disorganized too. And what that means is the source of comfort, which is their partner, is also the source of harm. And that's very confusing for an attachment system that's looking to attach securely to something, but the secure attachment has gone. It's fragile. So this person's become obsessed. They become they overvalue the relationship. The relationship takes up a lot more space in their mind, in their lives. That person begins to lose themselves over time. This is an addiction cycle. And we know how hard addiction is to break. So if something is resonating for you in this story and you're thinking, well, this is what's happening in my relationship, there's unpredictability, sometimes they're there for me, sometimes they're not. And I'm not talking about somebody who's having a bit of an off day. I'm talking about really hard ground in push-pull dynamics, threats to leave, ghosting, non-responsiveness, which would include stonewalling, withdrawal of affection. At worst, it's going to be insults, contempt, pushing, shoving, physical violence, verbal violence, name calling, character assassinations. If any of this resonates with you, firstly, I really empathise because it's awful. But secondly, I want you to acknowledge that you can know this intellectually and you can even leave intellectually. But your body, your attachment system, your neurobiology will take a lot longer to come to the party. So it might take you several attempts to leave, but I will say talk about it. You need to talk to somebody about it. You need to write it down. You need to get support, and you need to orient yourself to the question, how does this impact me? What is the cost if I stay here? Those are your strategies to leave. Okay. Take care.